In this video, we're going to look at producing graphs and tables. So this is all about communicating the results of our findings in a reader-friendly manner. So why do we do this? We need to produce graphs and tables in software other than SPSS, as it doesn't do this particularly well. We're going to look at using Excel, but obviously other software-based, such as Google-based software or other spreadsheet-based things, or any other, perhaps even proprietary software, could be really beneficial for this. So how do we do that? To do this, we're basically getting the output, only the output that we need from from SPSS, and copying it or manually putting it into our spreadsheet. I'm using Excel for Windows, so it might look slightly different for Mac or for other spreadsheet software. It is important that we acknowledge that not all the output from SPSS, as we can see on the screen here, is going to be essential or relevant to the reader. Lots of it is basically the statistical information that a reader doesn't need to know. For example, confidence intervals, Levene statistics, sum of squares, any of these robust tests, any of these sorts of things. If you're showing that to a client or a reader, they're going to be put off, they're going to be distracted, and they're going to be confused with what you're saying. It's not key to your argument, so we don't need to have it in the main body of the report. You do need to have this information to show you've done the analysis, but it goes in the appendices, and that can be done simply through screenshotting or copy and pasting, but not in the main body of the report because your reader's going to get lost along the way. All we want in the main body is the key information the reader needs to know, highlighting certain data fields. In the case of an ANOVA, it's things such as what was the mean figure. Perhaps you might include standard deviation, the group names, obviously not just a number, we'd give them the actual names, and the size, the number of people into those groups, and then some basic information around the statistical significance in terms of the F test. And then if you wanted to discuss any multi-comparisons between groups, you could do that in the footnotes as well. So what I'm going to do is take you through basically getting some information from it, chucking it into Excel, and just a few editing functions. Now, things such as bar graphs, pie graphs, stacked columns, etc., potentially line graphs if you're dealing with a variable over time, can be really beneficial here. I'm not going to go through them all. You should experiment yourself with what's the best way to communicate the findings depending on what it is you're trying to do. However, I will show you a few functions you can use to edit the graphs, just in case you're not sure. These are really important to ensuring the results are clear and visually appealing. There's lots of other tutorials available online, or if you've got specific things you're trying to do, search terms will always be helpful. When it comes to tables, I generally just select the key information, put it into a table, and then use formatting and formulas to improve its readability. The most important thing throughout this entire process is the readability. So we could start either by doing it manually. I'll just do it by copying it in here. I've right-clicked, copied the text into a new spreadsheet. I might just do Control-V for that one. I always like to give myself a little bit of room up at the top and below. Now what we can see here is a lot of these things we don't really need. Standard deviation, not essential at this point in time. We can always use that information, as we said, footnotes or things like that, but really when it comes to something like an ANOVA, I'm just going to call them generic group 1. Obviously, we call them group 2, group 3. I would obviously put the actual age range there. And then all we want to do is just be gathering the information. Because an ANOVA is about comparing the means across groups, so we're going to be showing those means. Now, what this table, because we're going to be producing a graph, it doesn't matter what this table looks like, because we'll be creating a graph from that. Now that we have a little bit of data in here, I've gone and actually got an example of a chart here. So all we did was select the actual numerics that we want to use, the values that are going to be into the chart. Insert. We did that via this. So I'll delete that old one. As you can see, we've got all our functions. Now, the first thing you want to be doing when editing these is clicking on the box, and then you've got this plus symbol. That'll allow you to change all of these things. And by clicking, you can turn them on or off. By clicking on the right, get more information. Let's say we want to put data labels, which I always recommend putting on top. You can then change where those data labels go, obviously. Sometimes there are some things that are just better done by copying or maybe screenshotting the actual table or graph itself and then doing some things as text box functions. For example, if you wanted to add an asterisk here which indicates something in a footnote, I would do that outside of Excel because it doesn't really allow you to do text boxes in the same way in Excel. If you wanted to make this kick, you could bold, you can make it larger. So you can do all your basic functionality. We could move these a little bit closer together So I might just move this screen a little bit more so you can see it. By clicking on the individual axis here, so the individual bars, we can then edit those things. So if I was to, the fill option would do that, or if I just wanted to do this middle one, I've double clicked on that one, and I could make double click. You'll notice the others are no longer selected, and then I could go fill, let's make it yellow. I've got that one. If you really want to make them stand out, I think a real trick when it comes to anything like this, anything design focused, try and do as minimal different colors as possible, and perhaps use it via distinct shades of the same color. So let's say we want to go green, and then you might make them as they, and again, it should tell the story of the data as they get smaller. Let's maybe perhaps make them a little bit more transparent. Actually, that's all of them. Sometimes having them transparent doesn't hurt as well. You can see the lines, but for this particular one, we might choose to make it a little bit lighter, so we go more colors. That one, and then we could do this one even lighter again because it's a smaller number, suggesting it's less of the particular phenomena or thing we're looking at. You start to see that sort of that gradient down there as well. Now, what's really important is your scale axis. We're looking at three numbers here which are quite similar in size, yet they look like they're extremely different. Now, just to go back, one more thing I might just go through. This is obviously the fill related to the actual thing and its border. This is to do with things like shadow, as you can see. But if we want to change something to do with the actual chart option, that's where we want to be looking for the bar. We can also go to individual things of the graph in that way as well. So I want to make these wider and less of a gap between them, so I can reduce the gap width and make them bigger. Naturally, I would give the names, change the names of the particular things here. And the way we would do that, because I haven't selected it with there, what I would do is I would probably just get rid of the x-axis, or the x label. You get that, yeah, you can do it in that function. What can be really important though is the axis. Now by double clicking on this, it takes us to axis options. With something like a bar graph to do with a mean, you always want to start from 0, I believe, and let's get a maximum of say 25. Now by putting it on that more appropriate axis, we can actually now see that the difference between these isn't that much, which was actually the case, because if we looked at them, the figures are very, very similar, whereas before it was quite misleading. Now we might choose to click on that and we should be able to edit that, get that to, there is a way to make the numbers general, cool, if we don't want to have those. Yeah, so you'll get the idea. Try and fiddle around with what works best for you. Some things done probably easiest in Excel, some in Word. Now, if we wanted to create a table, I'll just quickly show you a little bit of functionality. Doesn't matter what these numbers are for the sake of it. I've just put some random ones in there. To create tables, again, keep it simple, keep it basic. I would always start by removing all the borders. And we might choose to go, okay, well, these are going to look better if they're something like whole numbers. Doesn't really warrant having decimal points. These ones have 3 decimal points where they've got 2. It's always important to keep them consistent. You might want to center those and obviously give them the appropriate label. You might choose to make your things bold. And then it's a matter of maybe doing an outside border, maybe some a line underneath here to really make these kick out. Get the idea. You might choose to make that one a certain shade. All those sorts of things. So it's really just about having some basic information and then doing the editing from there. And again, maybe copy and pasting or screenshotting that and putting some of that into Excel. If you want to screenshot it without having the axis labels, maybe perhaps doing it this way as a print screen, or in your view, you can actually remove your grid lines. So yeah, we'll leave it there for now. It's up to you guys to take some time to have a look at that for yourselves and really ensure you are producing data tables and graphs that give the most, that really tell the story and fit in with the analysis and interpretation you're providing.